I'll be taking my recommendation to the Cabinet colleagues about the position of the Reserve Bank Governor soon. This is one of the most important appointments that the government will make.
By the time Phil Lowe was announcing last week that the Reserve Bank would be implementing a number of reforms to the central bank flowing from a recent review, he would have already known that his own future at the bank was not a long one.
Can you assess your views on how you've been in this current term as Governor?
In terms of my own position, as I've said before, if I was asked to continue in the role, I would be honoured to do that and I would continue. If I'm not asked to continue in the role, I'll do my best to support my successor.
The Governor was dignity personified after a long period of intense speculation about his future and criticism of his performance.
I have said to him this week that the way that he has carried himself has been characteristically kind and classy and much appreciated by the government.
So Phil Lowe is a great guy, which leads to the obvious question, why hasn't his contract been renewed? And why he will be succeeded in September by his deputy, Michele Bullock, the first woman to occupy the job. The Treasurer says she is the best person to lead the bank through a time of change, brought on by a review Chalmers ordered into the bank last year.
And I know that Michele Bullock's committed to the RBA review process, as am I, as you know.
But some of the recommendations of that review explain the real reason why Lowe's time at the central bank is up.
The Governor will hold a media conference after each board meeting explaining the decision.
It has been as much Phil Lowe's communications that have got him into trouble as any decisions the bank may have taken under his watch. There have been plenty of times over the years when the bank has waited too long or moved too fast. But a few particular comments have caused particular notoriety and pain among many Australians.
Bill Lowe made everybody so angry because he miscommunicated at a very tough time.
The condition for a rise in the cash rate will not be met until 2024.
There were actually reasons why Lowe made those comments in the middle of the pandemic economic crisis.
Now, the reason that Phil made the argument about unlikely to see interest rates rise above zero by 2024 was part of that arsenal of unconventional monetary policy where central banks thought, well, short-term interest rates are zero. We've lost our lever.
The furore that has followed Lowe's comments has meant it has been almost impossible to consider broader questions of whether the way the bank does business needs to change. Jim Chalmers first announced an intended review of the bank from opposition in 2021. His critique at that time was really concerned with stagnant wages and a weak labour market. But by the time the review was eventually announced in July last year, its purpose had morphed somewhat.
This review will consider the RBA's objectives, mandate, the interaction between monetary, fiscal and macro-prudential policy, its governance, culture, operations and more.
The three-person panel has made many recommendations, though it has not touched the bank's 2 to 3% inflation target. Most controversially, it has suggested monetary policy, interest rates, should be set by a purpose-built board which brings in lots of outside experts on the subject.
The more recent high inflation, that episode is still unfolding, but early lessons that we can take from that are the value of expertise in understanding the supply side of the economy.
What I think we'll see a better policy process. We'll see more discussion of why policy settings are what they are. We'll see transparency, so not just the Governor making statements.
But not everyone agrees. Ian Macfarlane was Governor in 1996 when a formal statement of Reserve Bank independence was signed and the 2 to 3% inflation target formalised. In a lengthy critique in the Australian Financial Review in May, Mr Macfarlane said the review's proposed changes were in some cases quite radical and would, quote, greatly weaken the authority of the Governor and the bank, surround monetary policy making in elaborate and time-consuming processes, and make it harder for the public to discern the RBA's monetary policy intentions. It's these sorts of tussles flowing from the review which the new Governor will have to sort out, and some will require legislative change. But the most important thing Bullock will need to master is communications.
The unemployment rate will have to rise. 4.5 probably looks, we think, maybe in the ballpark.
These comments caused quite a stir last month, though they were defended by the Treasurer as uncontroversial. But a more complicated question is just who will speak for the bank and where. There are the regular post-board meeting press conferences which Phil Lowe announced last week, and which are a regular event in other countries like the US.
I was just wondering if you could help us understand the narrative here.
Our new governor is notably blunt about some things.
What other tools, if any, does the Reserve Bank have at its disposal to control inflation?
So this question does get asked a lot lately, and I know people are interested. The bottom line is none. We only have the interest rate.
But there are lots of issues to be worked out, such as whether the new structure would actually weaken the bank's independence by introducing more prospects for political patronage among the panel of outsiders.
I think when it comes to independence, it will strengthen the independence of the Reserve Bank.
In all the noise about a change of personnel, the challenges that await the new governor might have been overlooked. For Warwick McKibben, a long-time RBA staff member, once Michele Bullock's boss, and subsequently a long-time RBA board member, the government has chosen well.
She's very smart, very strong views. She's been throughout the entire bank, she understands it. She shows respect to those above her and below her, and she's well respected across the board, both inside the bank and outside. So it's quite unique to get a leader and a thinker in the same person who could pull this off, but I'm very confident she can.